Bought my house in Charlotte when I was 29 years old. Not inherited, not gifted, not co-signed by anyone. I saved for 6 years, lived in a one-bedroom apartment with a leaky faucet I fixed myself because I didn't want to bother the landlord, skipped vacations, drove a car with a cracked dashboard, and bought it myself. A 3-bedroom craftsman in Plaza Midwood, close enough to uptown that I could feel the city but far enough that the street was quiet at night. That house was mine in a way that nothing had ever been mine before. 2 years later, I bought a second property. I know how that sounds. I'm not saying it to brag. I'm saying it because it matters for what comes next. The second property was a 2-bedroom condo in Asheville, about 2 hours west of Charlotte. I found it during a work trip when a colleague took me to see the area around the River Arts District, and something about the light coming through those old warehouse windows just did something to me. I drove back that weekend alone and walked the neighborhood for 3 hours. I made an offer the following Tuesday. My plan was simple. I'd keep it as a short-term rental, use the income to pay down the mortgage faster, and eventually use it as a weekend retreat once it was paid off. I furnished it carefully. Good mattresses, quality linens, a real coffee maker, plants I asked a neighbor to water occasionally. I cared about that place. I had a property manager named Vince who handled the bookings and turnover for a percentage of the monthly income. And for 18 months, it ran beautifully. Then I decided to move it from short-term to long-term rental. The math made more sense for that stage of my life. I was busier with work. I didn't want to manage the variability of nightly bookings, and I had a tenant prospect through a colleague, a couple relocating for work who needed a furnished place for a year. It was perfect. I gave Vince 2 weeks' notice that we'd be pausing short-term rentals to transition, and I scheduled a trip to Asheville that Saturday to do a walkthrough, patch a few small things, and meet the prospective tenants in person. I didn't tell my family I was going. That part matters too. My family, specifically my mother and my younger brother, had known about the Asheville condo since I bought it. I made the mistake of mentioning it at Thanksgiving, and my mother's face had done this thing where it went very still and then very warm, like she was running a calculation behind her eyes. She'd said something like, "How wonderful," in a tone that meant something else entirely. My brother was 26, living with his girlfriend in a 2-bedroom apartment in Greensboro, working a job he complained about constantly. He and I had always had a complicated relationship. Not hostile, not close. We were cordial in the way people are when they grew up in the same house, but never quite understood each other. He borrowed money once and paid it back late, and when I said something about it, he acted like I had accused him of a crime. After that, I stopped lending. So when I pulled up to my building in Asheville that Saturday morning and the front desk attendant gave me a slightly odd look when I signed in, I didn't understand what I was seeing. I took the elevator to the 4th floor. I unlocked my door, my key, my lock, and pushed it open. The smell hit me first. Not bad, exactly, but lived in. Coffee, something fried, a faint trace of cologne or candle I didn't recognize. Then I registered the shoes by the door. Men's shoes. A pair of women's sneakers. A child's light-up sneakers. Small, pink and white. I stood in my doorway and looked at my living room, which had been rearranged. My throw pillows were on the floor. There was a cereal bowl on my coffee table, still with milk in it. The TV was on a cartoon, and then my brother's girlfriend walked out of my kitchen holding a spatula. She froze. I froze. She recovered first. "Oh," she said. "Hey." I walked in slowly and set my bag down. "Where is he?" She called his name toward the bedroom. I heard him before I saw him, the specific way he shuffles when he's been caught doing something, and then he appeared in the doorway of what was supposed to be my guest room, hair still flat on one side from sleeping. He looked at me and actually smiled, not sheepish, not apologetic. He smiled like this was just a surprise visit between two people who were on totally normal terms. "Hey," he said. "Didn't know you were coming." "I didn't know you were here," I said. "At all. In my apartment." He scratched the back of his neck. "Yeah, so we've been dealing with some stuff with our lease. Mom said we could stay here for a bit while we figured it out." I heard myself say the words very carefully. "Mom said you could stay here. She said she'd talk to you about it." He shrugged one shoulder. "She said it'd be fine." I took out my phone right there and called my mother. She answered on the second ring, which told me she'd been waiting. "I'm at the condo," I said. "I know," she said. "I was going to call you this week, Mom. He's been staying here. How long?" A pause. "About 3 weeks." 3 weeks. I walked to my bedroom. my bedroom and opened the door. Their bags were in there. Their things were on my nightstand. The nice bedding I'd bought was rumpled and smelled like someone else's life. You gave him the spare key. It was an emergency, sweetheart. Their landlord sold the building. They had 30 days and they couldn't find anything in time. I didn't think you'd mind for a little while. You didn't ask me. I knew you'd say no. There it was. I stood in my own bedroom and looked at someone else's water glass on my nightstand, and I felt something go very flat and very cold inside me. Not rage. Something quieter and more final than rage. I have prospective tenants coming to see this unit in 3 hours, I said. She made a sound. You can reschedule. I'm not rescheduling. She's being ridiculous, she said. Not to me. I realized she was talking to someone nearby. Then back to me, it's your brother. He's family. He needed help. He has a father. He has friends. He has options that are not my property without my permission. My brother had drifted into the doorway of the bedroom by then. He dropped the smile. He was watching me the way he used to watch me when we were kids, and I was saying something he found inconvenient. You want us to just leave? He said, like right now? I need this unit clean and staged by noon, I said. I have tenants coming at 1. His girlfriend appeared behind him. She was quieter than him, always had been, and I noticed she wasn't arguing. She looked embarrassed. This is insane, he said. We don't have anywhere to go. I understand that's a difficult situation, I said, but it's not a situation I created. Mom said, Mom doesn't own this property. I do. He laughed, but it wasn't funny. It was the kind of laugh that means you're being unbelievably unreasonable. So you're going to kick your own brother out onto the street. I'm asking you to leave a property you've been living in for 3 weeks without my knowledge or permission. Split hairs all you want, you know what you're doing. I looked at him for a long moment. I thought about the 6 years I saved. I thought about the cracked dashboard in my old car. I thought about Thanksgiving 2 years ago and the look on my mother's face. You have until noon, I said. He stared at me. And if we're not out? I already had my phone in my hand. Then I'll call the non-emergency line and let them sort out the trespassing question. He laughed again, louder this time. You wouldn't. I looked up the number and started dialing. The laugh stopped. His girlfriend put her hand on his arm. Babe, come on, let's just go. He stood there a second longer, doing the thing where he tried to stare me down, the thing that used to work when we were teenagers. Then he turned and went back into the bedroom without another word. I went and sat on my couch, on the cushions that had been moved, next to the coffee table with the cereal bowl, and I called Vince to let him know the unit would need a quick clean before the afternoon showing. Vince didn't ask questions. I appreciated that. My mother called back 11 minutes later. I can't believe you're doing this, she said. I can't believe you gave away my key without asking me. He's your brother. Yes, and this is my property. She was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had gone softer, which was worse. You've always been so hard, even as a little girl. You never just, Mom. What? What you did wasn't okay. You both know it wasn't okay. If it had been okay, you would have called me first. She didn't say anything. I'll talk to you later, I said, and hung up. My brother and his girlfriend were out by 11:40. She left the door open when they left. Not a slam, just open. And I stood there looking at my apartment. They'd taken their bags and their shoes and left behind a sink with dishes in it, a bathroom with their products still on the shelf, and a general sense of occupation I'd need a few hours to undo. I cleaned. I wiped down every surface in the kitchen. I washed the dishes. I stripped the bed, washed the linens, remade it with the backup set I'd stored in the closet. I reorganized the living room, put the throw pillows back, moved the couch 3 inches to where it belonged, repositioned the lamp. I rearranged the coffee table the way I had it in the listing photos. The little tray with the candle and the stacked books I'd carefully chosen for the aesthetic. By 12:50, the place looked exactly like mine again. The prospective tenants, a couple, both physicians relocating for a fellowship program, arrived at 1 o'clock. They were warm and professional and asked good questions. They admired the kitchen countertops. The wife lingered at the windows, looking out at the mountains in the distance and said quietly, "This is lovely." They signed the lease 17 days later. A full year, excellent references, a deposit paid without any negotiation. They were going to take good care of that place. I could feel it. In the weeks after, my mother called twice. Both times the calls were short. She said she hoped I knew what I'd done to the family. I said I hoped she understood that permission is something you ask for, not something you decide someone would give if asked. She didn't like that. I don't think she was used to me being clear in quite that way. My brother texted once, "One sentence, must be nice to care more about rents than family." I read it 3 times and didn't respond. The one person who reached out and actually said the right thing was my aunt, my mother's older sister, who had always observed our family from a slight distance the way wise people do. She texted me on a Wednesday night out of nowhere, heard what happened. "You did the right thing. Don't let them convince you otherwise." I stared at that message for a long time. 7 words that meant more than every phone call my mother had made. My aunt understood something my mother didn't want to understand, that asking forgiveness instead of permission only works when the person you're asking has the option to say no. I was never given that option, and when I exercised it myself, I became the villain. I've thought a lot about that in the months since, about how in some families the person who says no becomes the hard one, the cold one, the one who cares more about things than people, as if the only way to prove you love someone is to let them take from you. As if having limits means you're withholding love instead of protecting your life. That condo in Asheville is doing well. My tenants sent me a message last month with a photo of the view from the window, snow on the mountains, just the mountains and the light, and a note that said they were hoping to renew. I told them I'd be happy to talk terms. I drove out there a few weeks ago, not for business, just because I wanted to see it. I didn't go inside. I just stood outside the building for a few minutes looking up at the 4th floor. My chest felt open and uncomplicated. That's mine, I thought. I built that. Nobody gave it to me and nobody gets to take it, not even family. Maybe especially family. Some people will read this and think I should have been more flexible. That family is messy and grace is part of love and I could have found a middle way. Maybe. But I have noticed that the people who say that are rarely the ones who had their spare key given away without their knowledge, who had a stranger's shoes in their doorway, who stood in their own bedroom and looked at someone else's life, arranged where their life was supposed to be. You don't owe anyone your property just because they share your last name. You don't have to justify working hard. You don't have to apologize for saying this is mine when it is. I learned that at 29, buying my first house alone, it just took until 32 for my family to understand that I meant it. There's something nobody tells you about setting a boundary with family. It doesn't feel like strength when you're in the middle of it. It feels like standing in a room that used to be yours and wondering how you became the problem. I've replayed that Saturday morning 100 times, walking into my own condo and smelling someone else's life in it, seeing my brother's girlfriend with a spatula in my kitchen, looking at me like I was the one who had walked into the wrong place. I think about the moment he smiled at me. Not sorry, not embarrassed, just easy and unbothered. And I understand now what that smile was telling me. It was telling me that somewhere along the way, he had genuinely come to believe that what was mine was available to him, and that belief didn't come from nowhere. It came from years of small moments where someone in our family communicated without ever saying the words that my things, my time, my effort were a shared resource, that my success was a pool everyone could draw from. My mother gave away my key because she had decided I would say yes if asked. She skipped the asking. That tells you everything about the dynamic I spent years not naming clearly enough. I'm not angry at her the way I used to be. I don't think she acted from malice. I think she acted from a belief system so old and embedded that she couldn't see it as a choice. The belief that when one child has more, the other is owed a portion of it, and the child who has more should be grateful for the opportunity to give. What she never accounted for was that I built what I built by making hundreds of quiet, unglamorous decisions that nobody saw. Nobody was there for the 6 years of saving. Nobody rode in the car with a cracked dashboard. Nobody asked me how I was doing when I was eating leftovers 3 days in a row to hit my monthly savings goal. But the moment there was a condo with a mountain view, suddenly everyone had an opinion about how I should use it. That's how it works, I've learned. The discipline that builds the thing is invisible. The thing itself is very visible. And people who weren't present for the first part feel oddly entitled to weigh in on the second. What I did that Saturday. Asking my brother to leave, following through when he tested me, holding that line when my mother called and made me feel like a stranger in my own moral framework. That wasn't cruelty. It was the completion of something I should have finished years earlier. Every time I'd let a small violation go unnamed, I had been teaching everyone around me that unnamed violations were acceptable. The cause wasn't that morning. The cause was every morning before it when I chose peace over clarity. My aunt understood it. 8 words in a text message, no drama, no performance. Just you did the right thing. Don't let them convince you otherwise. I've kept that message. I look at it sometimes not because I need the reassurance anymore, but because it reminds me that in most families there is at least one person who sees clearly. You just have to stop drowning out their voice with the noise from everyone else. The condo is doing well. My tenants renewed. The mountains are still there. I am still here too. A little quieter about what I have, a little quicker to name what matters, and no longer waiting for my family to give me permission to protect my own life.